What did I just watch, guys? What was that ending? I wasn't planning on talking about Berserk today, at least. I finished watching it yesterday, and today I tried to make a video on some other unrelated to anime topic, and I can't stop thinking about what I just saw and what happened in the end of Berserk. It just drives me bananas. Like, most of the stuff that happened at the end of series was not what I expected at all. That is just crazy. First of all, I gotta mention that I know that there is manga. I haven't read manga yet, but I know about its existence, and I know about the whole plot, that the whole plot is gonna be in manga. That's what made me think about the TV series as a way to promote manga, I suppose, because there is a beginning with Black Sword, which is completely different arc, and I was hoping to eventually come back to it while watching TV series, and I hope that the plot will twist somehow and come back to the arc, which will complete the whole idea, but it didn't, and it led to some other direction, which feels unfinished still. Like, the ending the ending of this anime series make you wonder what the hell was going on, and why, and how did it lead to this moment, and why there was a Black Sword in the beginning, and how he was still alive fighting monsters. The whole opinion on the TV series right now is fresh. I just finished watching it and I didn't come back to it. I just wanna process what I've experienced at the first glance, and I didn't go to forums. I haven't watched videos explaining the arc and all that jazz. I just wanna give you the fresh emotions, you know, from specifically watching Berserk anime. The only thing I've read about and was interested in learning about is actually that at some point I felt the resemblance between Berserk and Dark Souls games, you know, from Software. It felt like that medieval aura and that sword, and the constructions and the castles and the whole atmosphere, and kind of like what's in the air of TV series reminded me of Dark Souls for some reason. And then later I've read about the inspiration that was taken from Berserk manga towards developing Dark Souls series, which is absolutely cool because I didn't know about it, but then eventually I kind of learned about it I just felt it, you know, which shows you that it wasn't just simply copy-pasted from Berserk, like some constructions and all that jazz. It was really inspired, and you feel the inspiration. You don't feel like you saw it already, you feel the inspiration, which is the best way to do it. So this was the first thing I wanted to talk about straight ahead. Other topic I wanted to discuss related to anime series is characters, and there is a lot. It kind of feels that the development and the progress of every single character was not made, like, it's not fast, it's barely even noticeable, you know, because the first fight between Guts and Griffith and the last fight, you still see them as the same characters in the first fight and in the second fight. Like, you don't see the huge improvement or huge change, like, in their appearance and in their energy and all that stuff. Only slight, like, you feel it slightly, which is enough to guess only where this fight is gonna lead to. But you still experience, like, the second fight between Guts and Griffith, where he just won with one swing, where he broke his sword. You kind of feel that Guts was actually practicing during those 3 years. All he was doing is practicing his sword art and all that stuff. And Griffith, at the same time, was practicing some other things. He was practicing, you know, the nobility, and practicing being a leader, and this is what he was mostly working with all this time. And you kind of expect Guts to win in that fight, but at the same time, you kind of feel like in the first fight, the Griffith was so much more dominant in that fight that you kind of still hesitate if Guts is gonna win. Other character, like, there is a triangle basically, Casca, and the development of her, oh man, I went through a lot of emotions towards Casca. The worst one was when they fell off the cliff during the fight to the river, and Guts saved her basically. Oh man, she pissed me off. I'm gonna be honest, she pissed me off in those series. I was like, man, especially when they were running from the cave trying to save themselves from bandits who were following them, and they stood in the middle of the forest, and they were surrounded by enemies, and she was standing behind Guts and be like, oh no, You were bleeding. Hell yeah, he did, bro. Like, those little moments made me, oh man, experience a lot of stuff towards Casca. But then eventually she kind of developed and she became more with like female features instead of warrior features as she was portrayed, compared to what she was portrayed in the beginning of the series. And this was really nice to observe. But at the same time, she had this core, like she once gave her heart to someone and she stayed with this. And oh my god, the ending, man. But okay, right now we're just discussing the characters and all that stuff. There were also minor characters which were awesome, like that guy, I don't remember his name, who was throwing daggers. He basically was like a glue between that, like in that triangle he was trying to, you know, communicate it in a way that all the characters are communicating. Of course, Griffith, I forgot to speak about them, I just went through Casca and Guts arc. From the beginning, his distance from everybody else immediately felt evil and devilish. He was always to himself in his mind, and that charm that he had kinda gave you hints about where it's gonna lead, and you were expecting from the beginning of, like, from the first impression, you were expecting him to develop into something dangerous eventually, which basically happened. We still left you with a lot of questions. Was he really a friend? Like, was he actually feeling himself as a friend to Guts? And that breakthrough moment when he was basically broken down to pieces in that dungeon, and then he resurrected into something that he was actually going towards during the whole during every episode. And it reminded me of Itachi in Naruto, which became who he was after he done terrible things to his clan, basically. So it's drawn as a such breakthrough moment that, like, they go deep down and then they resurrect into something completely different. It's like the change of the character made so drastically and so dramatically, and it's completely justified by the plot because they were broken down to pieces and then they kind of, like, you know, changed everything about themselves. And again, was he actually feeling anything at all, like, towards Guts or anybody else? Was he feeling anything? Was he seeing anything else but his dream and his goal? Now I want to separate and talk about worst and best moments in TV series. I'll start with worst. And just to remind you again, we're talking only about anime series. So the first moment, which is, I believe, the most obvious one, is it begins in a certain arc, and during every episode you expect it somehow lead to that arc, but it never does. So it felt kind of like a clickbait. Basically, you start watching TV series and it shows you one thing, like the final form and some other arc, which is never being mentioned in the series at all. Only at the end it leads to monsters appearing, which is closer to the beginning, but still doesn't open it, like doesn't show you the whole picture. Another moment is that it kind of felt like the show had a lot of fillers, a lot of unnecessary to the plot battles and you know, moments when they were just conquering some castles and all that stuff. That general who was always surviving somehow during those fights, and it kind of felt unnecessary and unrelatable to the plot. Then Casca. That was a roller coaster of emotions, to be honest. At first, when she appeared in series and she felt strong emotions toward Guts, she was like, you don't belong here and all that stuff. You immediately start to think about, just wait, the series are gonna develop and eventually she will feel differently about Guts. That's how I felt from the beginning of series, when she was so drastic about him and she was so rude and all that stuff. I was like, she's gonna love him at some point. But then they kind of held this attitude from her towards Guts through a lot of episodes, and you start to doubt that idea of change. And when they fell to that river, that moment, oh man, I was like, nah, they're never gonna be together. They're never gonna feel any emotions towards each other. But it was directed more towards feelings of Casca, not Guts. Guts started to change his attitude towards her. He hadn't had strong opinion towards her from the beginning. It wasn't portrayed. And then he kind of started to feel something, but he was totally mad about it. He understood that she already gave her heart to Griffith, you know, even without Griffith knowing. Maybe he knew about it, but he was still just letting it be, you know. He wasn't expecting the same feelings towards him, because once she gave it to Griffith, it's not gonna change. He was sure in it. But again, during that battle and during those episodes about this battle and when they fell to the river, Casca was portrayed as female in the men's field, you know? And everybody started to talk to her about that moment, and everybody started saying her, like, what are you doing in the field? You were female and all that stuff. It also felt like a breaking moment for a character, and that's where the change started to happen. After that, then she kind of started to feel a little bit better about gods, especially when he started to talk about, hinting about that he was going to leave the Hawks. She realized that her emotions changed, and then again, she kind of showed the change of emotions, the change of heart towards gods, and they even made love and all that stuff. But then at the end, she kind of, like when they saved Griffith, she kind of again shifted her focus on Griffith, and she was still dedicated to Griffith more than to gods, which pissed me off, man. Like, honestly, seeing that she was telling gods, you have to leave Hawks and all that stuff, I'm gonna watch Griffith, like, man, put yourself in a god's shoes. Like, didn't you just give him a chance and showed him that something is possible between you two, and that you can change, and you can change your heart from Griffith to gods, and then you back up on that? Doesn't make any sense, man. That, like, those two moments with Casca pissed me off, really. Not like I feel something strongly towards Casca or anything of that sort, but like, I understand that it was the idea to portray her this way and to portray the plot this way, but I just let myself to experience those emotions, you know? What else? The ending, I think I'm gonna put it into the worst moments section, because what the hell was that again? What the writer was thinking about the plot that made him to think that doing, like, changing Griffith, it's all understandable, but like what he did to Casca at the end in front of gods was just absurd. It kind of, you still understand it, that it showed the emotions that Griffith genuinely experienced towards gods during their whole relationship. You kind of understand that it's just erupted at that moment. It was held in a cage inside of Griffith, you know, and eventually when the change was done and he finally decided to show him his true self, it was just the eruption that led to that pivotal moment, and it was happening in front of gods to let him know that this is what I really am. But still, that moment was traumatizing, honestly. It was like, man, I was thinking about telling my nephew to watch this series, but then after seeing the ending, I was like, nah, man, I'm not suggesting that to him. Like, he can't see that. He's too young for that. That was absolutely crazy, man. I can't stop thinking about that moment. That's why I want to let it out. Like, I want to let all the emotions out so you experience it with me, and especially if you watched it, I'm pretty sure you know what I feel. Alright, now let's talk about moments that I enjoyed. After trying to remember all those worst moments, it's quite difficult to to focus on the best ones. The best moments, in my opinion, are in the hidden messages of the series. Especially when gods left the Hawks, when the change started to happen in the Hawks, in Griffith, in gods. The things that gods understood when he left the Hawks, it's kind of like it feels like a life lesson, you know? He tried to pursue his dream, not seeing what was in front of him. It was even mentioned, I think I even quoted what he said in the series. That shift in him understanding what his actual dream was, the idea of a man chasing his dream and willing to sacrifice a lot of things to go towards it, and to actually think about his dreams and to think about his life goals, and being able to actually think and consider that it's not what he wanted to do in life, even though he was doing what he loved, like swinging the sword, you know. Then another moment when he actually realized that what he sacrificed wasn't the sacrifice for his dream, it was his dream that he sacrificed. And him coming back to it, it's like, you know, there is a saying, if you're on a water in a boat and the boat is starting to burn, you jump into the water and you realize that the water is full of sharks. you don't come back to the boat that is burning. You go and look for another one. And this is what Guts basically did. He came back to that burning boat. He left the Hawks and he realized that he was the core of their band. And him seeing it crumble kinda left a scar on his heart, that he started to think that it's totally his fault that everything just went the way it was. And part of it was actually true, that the Hawks couldn't do anything without Guts, and Guts was the main character basically, because everything just fell apart after him leaving. Then he came back to that boat and tried to fix it, but all it led to was just turning it, like spreading the ashes across that ocean. Casca took a role of a leader of the Hawks, and she was planning on going after Griffith and saving him, and in her opinion it was what would save the Hawks. But just because Griffith was in a dungeon all this time allowed him to think about what he actually was and reconsider everything that was going on and the way he was pursuing his dream, and that he was talking about that Guts is only on what's on his mind. And I believe it kind of made him realize that his dream was only running away from him because Guts was near. And as long as there is no Guts and that feeling of relationship nearby, like in his mind and on like in front of him, he was actually much closer to his dream and to his goal than he thought he was. And after they saved him from this dungeon, and when he already left and was sitting in that lake with the charm in his hand, Guts was running towards him, and he genuinely tried to save Griffith, and like the thoughts of Griffith was like, don't touch me, because he didn't finish his speech, like in his mind, his thoughts. And then he turns into something that does the ending in front of Guts eventually. Like, that was unnecessarily traumatizing. I said it already many times and I'll say it again. That was completely unnecessary. But at the same time, it was necessary, because it just showed the whole, like, it just showed the most evil and dirty mind of Griffith, you know, like, and after he changed, he didn't say a single word. He was just violent in that situation. You know, he specifically held Casca to do what he did, and wow. Other than that, I don't know if I would suggest people watching Berserk. Maybe if they're the proper age for watching that stuff and they mentally already developed. It would be, again, traumatizing if you would see it as a teenager. Maybe it would definitely have an impact on your life and on the way you think. But in general, a lot of emotions, good experience. Well, I say good like it was all green field and flowers. It definitely is hard to watch, but kind of like worth it, you know, at some point, especially when you see in life and you seen what's it's like. So in general, Berserk was quite an experience. A lot of emotions, good and bad, mostly bad. But when I say bad, you still understand during those bad emotions that it's just dirt that tries to teach you somehow, you know, if it makes sense. And the main message from the series that I personally received from first time watching, maybe you will watch it, I will watch it again sometime later and I will see something different in it. But right now, what I saw was chasing your dream is not only hard, you have to sacrifice a lot for that, and you have to, at the same time, you have to see and be careful, because your dream could be everything you already have, and you changing that moment could lead to some unrevertible circumstances. But yeah, thanks again for listening. I just wanted to share the raw emotions right after I finished watching this anime series. Maybe later I'll analyze it more and I'll rethink it and I'll go to forums and maybe I will try to read manga and I will open up some new prospects on Berserk, and maybe I will even make another video on Berserk. But right now I wanted to share and give it as it is after just just stumbling upon it and coming to watch this series and be it as it like let it out as it is. Anyways, let me know in the comments your thoughts about this Berserk TV series. Maybe you can share some other perspective that you've experienced from watching, or maybe some other perspective that you've realized while watching TV series. It would be better for the first time, but even after you figured it out from manga or whatever, still let me know. It would be interesting to read. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and this is basically all I wanted to rant about, so see ya.